The old lighthouse stood sentinel against the churning grey of the North Sea, a skeletal finger pointing accusingly at the sky. I was its sole keeper, assigned to the isolated post for 6 months. A punishment, really. A reckless bet gone wrong, a drunken boast about my imperviousness to loneliness and the creeping dread of the sea. Now, the loneliness was a constant companion, a heavy blanket woven from the shrieking wind and the mournful clang of the foghorn. The first few weeks were bearable. I cleaned, maintained the lamp, meticulously logged the weather. I even started sketching the crashing waves, trying to capture their raw, untamed power. But the sea, I soon learned, was not just powerful. It was patient. And it was hungry. It started subtly. A chill in the air that permeated even the warmest sweaters. A persistent drip, drip, drip from a pipe in the engine room, no matter how many times I tightened the fittings. Then came the whispers. I'd be high in the lantern room, the beam slicing through the impenetrable fog, and I'd hear it, a low, mournful sigh carried on the wind. I dismissed it as the foghorn's drone playing tricks on my ears. One night, during a particularly violent storm, the whispers intensified. They became a chorus, a cacophony of moans and wails that seemed to emanate from the sea itself. I huddled in my bunk, hands clamped over my ears, praying for dawn. When it finally came, the storm had passed, leaving a strange, unnatural calm in its wake. The sea was glassy, reflecting the pale sky like a polished mirror. Too calm. It felt wrong. That's when I saw it. Washed up on the rocks below the lighthouse, amidst the seaweed and flotsam, was a figure. It looked like a woman, sprawled on the jagged stones, her long, dark hair swirling in the surf. I grabbed my binoculars and peered closer. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, they were wide open, staring blankly up at the lighthouse. Empty. Lifeless. I scrambled down the winding stairs, adrenaline pumping through my veins. As I approached the body, a wave crashed against the rocks, momentarily obscuring it from view. When the water receded, she was gone. Had I imagined it? The isolation was getting to me, I reasoned. I needed to report it, of course, but I hesitated. They'd think I was losing it. That night, the whispers returned, louder than before. They seemed to be calling my name. Daniel. Daniel. The voice was a woman's, soft and alluring, yet laced with an undercurrent of sorrow that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to ignore it, to focus on my duties, but the voice was relentless, seeping into my mind, wrapping around me like a cold, clammy hand. Then, the banging started. A slow, deliberate thudding against the lighthouse door, as if someone, or something, was trying to get in. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling. The banging stopped. Silence. Then, the voice again, closer now, right outside the door. "Daniel, open the door. I'm cold." Terror rooted me to the spot. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that whatever was outside was not human. I peered through the peephole, but saw nothing. Only the impenetrable darkness and the swirling fog. I retreated to the lantern room, the one place in the lighthouse where I felt safe. The beam of the lamp was a tangible force, pushing back the darkness, a beacon of hope in a sea of despair. I told myself it was just the wind, the old building creaking and groaning. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As I swept the beam across the water, something caught my eye. A face. Bobbing in the waves, illuminated for a fleeting moment by the light. The woman from the rocks. Her eyes were still open, staring up at me, her lips parted in a silent scream. Then, the lamp flickered. The beam sputtered, then died, plunging the lighthouse into darkness. Panic seized me. I fumbled for the emergency generator, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the controls. Finally, with a lurch, the generator kicked in, bathing the room in a dim, yellow light. I turned back to the window. The woman was gone. But now, there were others. Dozens of them, floating in the water, their pale faces illuminated by the generator light, their eyes fixed on the lighthouse. They were silent, motionless, but their gaze was a palpable pressure, a suffocating weight that threatened to crush me. The banging started again, louder this time, accompanied by scratching, clawing sounds against the stone walls. They were trying to get in. I knew I couldn't stay here. I had to get out, to reach the mainland. I grabbed my emergency radio, but the signal was dead. I was completely cut off. As the banging grew more insistent, I made a decision. I would climb to the very top of the lighthouse, to the lantern room. It was the highest point, the strongest part of the structure. Perhaps, just perhaps, I could hold out until dawn. The climb was agonizing. The wind howled, the lighthouse swayed, and the banging echoed relentlessly below. As I reached the lantern room, the door burst open. They were inside. Pale, dripping figures, their eyes wide and empty, their arms outstretched. They moved with a slow, deliberate purpose, their moans a symphony of despair. I backed away, cornered. There was nowhere left to go. One of the figures reached out and touched my face. Its skin was cold, clammy, like the flesh of a corpse. A wave of nausea washed over me. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable. Then, a sound. A single, clear note, like a bell ringing in the distance. The figures froze. Their moans ceased. They slowly turned their heads towards the sound. The note rang again, closer this time. And again, growing louder and more insistent with each repetition. The figures recoiled, their eyes widening in fear. They began to dissipate, fading into the darkness like mist in the morning sun. The banging stopped. The scratching ceased. The lighthouse fell silent. I opened my eyes. The figures were gone. The bell continued to ring, a rhythmic, insistent pulse that seemed to penetrate my very being. I stumbled to the window and looked out. In the distance, a ship was approaching. Its lights shone brightly through the fog, a beacon of salvation in the darkest of nights. As the ship drew closer, I saw a figure standing on the deck. A woman, tall and slender, her long, dark hair swirling in the wind. She was holding a bell, and with each ring, the fog seemed to recede, the darkness to lift. She smiled at me, a sad, knowing smile. Then, she raised the bell one last time, and the lighthouse was flooded with light, chasing away the shadows, banishing the despair. I never saw her again. The ship sailed away, disappearing into the dawn. I was rescued that morning. They found me huddled in the lantern room, babbling incoherently. They said I was delirious, suffering from exposure and exhaustion. They said there was no evidence of anything unusual, no bodies on the rocks, no damage to the lighthouse. They didn't believe me. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know that the sea is not just powerful and patient. It remembers. And it never forgets. I left the lighthouse the next day, and vowed never to return to the sea. Some things, I learned, are best left undisturbed. The whispers, I know, will never truly leave me. But at least, now, I am not alone to hear them.